life living and making a living can sometimes wear us out, grind us down, and dull our senses. So for a keen mind and a sharp contributive edge that can make it all easier and better and more productive, let's take some time to sharpen our axe. Stay with us right now for Life Talk.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Stephen Mills, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk. It's a series of verbal essays in the television format. And I'd like to welcome again our ongoing world-class educator, Bern Moses, with us this evening. Thanks again for being here, Bern.
That's a nice intro. Thank you. Thank you for being our guest host.
It's a pleasure.
I'd like to make it a steady diet, but I understand you're moving into an exciting new arena in your life. Do you want to kind of share with everybody what it is you'll be doing?
Sure. In the world of computers and telecommunications and governments and large corporations, there's a steady need to coordinate what are pieces of software and communications throughout companies from program to program. And I'll be working as an international educator in the global scene in the Asia-Pacific area and South Central America and perhaps Europe as well. And have great anticipation. This is going to be a fun adventure.
Yeah, you have to kind of broaden your language skills. You're studying, what is it, Mandarin?
Mandarin, and also a computer language called Unix, which is an unusual one. So really very exciting.
I know you're excited because I remember you talking about it months, even years ago, about how you wanted to have an international influence or, to be out there. So this is exciting. How did you find that? People wonder, how did people get these deals? I mean, explain how simple or how difficult it was.
Well, I think part of the amazement of any kind of discovery, of work discovery, is working strenuously, vigorously, excitedly, not grousing about life and work too terribly at all, and distinguishing ourselves amongst co-workers and projects in a national and international scene. You emerge as a contributor, and that brings people to attend and appreciate what you're doing, what is occurring, for their benefit, for the project's benefit, and for my benefit as well.
So are you implying that your previous association with a company and the contributions you made there opened a doorway by one of those people to this? So it wasn't just a cold approach or an ad that you answered. It was just a rolling of influence.
Yeah, it was. There were times when I wasn't certain what would roll because of the time frame. Yet there were 6 people and corporations recruiting my efforts and my background, which was a wonderful environment to be in, to have people asking for you. That's an unusual luxury.
That is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
People are pursuing you.
Yes.
Yeah. Any particular thing you had to do in order to distinguish yourself as an applicant?
I think primarily reflect clearly what it is that I use as tools on an ongoing day-to-day basis, identifying what we can use to manage the complex projects and the changes, the swift product and marketing changes that occur day by day, hour by hour, literally. And then how we maintain a constant teamwork effort, rather than just behaving as a solo Lone Ranger kind of an entity out there in the workforce. There are a lot of people who think that their job is to be the most severe competitor available, and that will distinguish them.
Isn't that tragic?
It is, and truly sabotages the progress of the team, the project, and often their own career.
I know the other day I did a seminar where we touched on the linear behavior that has been instilled in us from the time we were born, practically. In other words, linear in the sense that you do what you're told, and if you do that well, you're honored, you're respected, you're loved, and then of course you get into a situation where in school you are assigned a topic, you study it, and you pass the test and get a good grade, and then you get into the marketplace and you're told to compete, and that in all probability you have to politic. You got to politic in order to survive, let alone get ahead. Certainly you have to do it well to get ahead. And that somehow that doesn't work for most people, because you get into those kind of things and you do have indeed a pyramid where one person may distinguish himself and so many others get left behind. So it's kind of fascinating. It certainly doesn't prepare us to be entrepreneurial, to
Absolutely.
be truly free.
Yeah.
Boy, it's just it's tragic out there. What I see day in and day out, the masses of people who are trying to be free, trying to break away from those linear jobs, and really running into trouble. And it's tragic.
Many of the inner gurus, if you will, of the business community, the economic world in the United States and other countries are identifying that it's essential for every professional to treat their company as their own.
Right.
Their company experience, the group experience, as their own corporation in order to make innovations daily. And to stir that, I remember last week I attended a presentation you did, a seminar for, actually it was a generic presentation for multi-level and network marketing professionals. And I heard you mention something, Bert, and I wanted to ask you to elaborate upon it, because I saw in the world that I was privy to in communications, people on an ongoing basis trying to do better than they had been, trying to stir others to do better, inspire others to do better, and some of the time it just wasn't working. In fact, many of the corporations I've watched intimately, they're looking at a 42 to almost 67% of non-doers, non-functional people who are just eking by day.
Right.
Their standard...
And that's in a structured, accommodating environment.
Exactly,
There.
exactly. But their whole perspective from the management team is typically to create a contest, something that will present competitiveness and hope that something comes out of that that's productive for the individuals as well as the company profitability and the whole team effort as well. What insights have you seen, and what would you say to that?
I don't think there's any question that here there's two perspectives. You have the corporate, the capitalist perspective, and then you have the participants, you know, the employees, the so-called competitors and what have you. And the corporation has a bottom line. And so when they run a contest, if they have any sense at all that it increased business, then they've accomplished what they wanted to do. And contests do seem to get some business, but they also diminish people and therefore ultimately can lose them. See, rather than developing contests, we'd be better off developing people who, when they're prepared, my experience is when people are prepared, they throw themselves into activities and want to contribute and make it work. You know what I mean? In other words, and of course that preparation is more than knowing the product and what to say about it. That's been the tragedy, I think. We've been developing the product, the script, and the training program, and yet ignoring the people in the purest sense. And that's who they were before, who they are becoming, what they're capable of. Now, capable, that kind of rings a little bell about capacities. You know, we have this is going to be kind of, we're just grabbing at straws here, so there may be some lack of structure. But this kind of leads me to the thing about people are, in their linear thinking, result-oriented. Certainly management is. They got to have the results.
So we've got is the numbers.
Yeah, it's just like this lady said at the seminar on Sunday. She said, well, how can I set aside the need for the result when I've got bills to pay and products sitting there that I've got to get rid of in order to get my next check? And I mean, I can sympathize with that. However, she wasn't getting it done. She wasn't moving the inventory by focusing on that. Isn't that odd? And so what I was saying is that perhaps better, in fact, absolutely better to focus on the process which creates the movement of the product. You know, you can depend on the process. You can't depend upon your need for the result. You know, it's kind of awesome that...
Can I rely upon that, though? As a manager, can I say, if I focus upon the process, and what do I focus upon? Is there a way to measure that?
There we go. I think it all starts back. Maybe we can get a little bit structured if we go back all the way. It's kind of like, you're talking about, what, 40, 50% non-participant?
Oh, yes.
Non-success?
Yes.
I was talking to a group of people who don't enjoy that. I mean, it's like 97-3.
Yeah.
Now, it's 97% of the results, and the money is being enjoyed by only 3% of the people. And so that's just awesome. And multi-level marketing, that's the actual statistic. But it doesn't indict multi-level marketing, which in itself is noble and is structured for everybody to do well. And they do train people, and they have meetings and what have you, and contests. But somehow or other, a lot of people get left behind. And so what I talk a lot about is that I can say to someone truthfully, in fact, 97% of them, can I? You don't have the ability to do this. It's kind of like, whoa, what are you saying to me? I'm saying you don't have the ability to do this, but you do have the capacity. Because you have the capacity to do anything that anyone's ever done in multi-level marketing. And then I make a point oftentimes, particularly when there are people with diminished capacities who have distinguished themselves. For example, in our past we've talked about Paul Hardison, who led the nation in sales in his company, number one out of, I think, about 17,000 salespeople as a deaf mute. And so, I mean, that takes away a lot of excuses.
Sure.
To someone who can do it all. Now, when I say do it all, when I say you have all the capacities you need, I mean, we got to start somewhere. And I'll tell you, I think most people ignore this. It's so commonplace, they take it for granted and don't celebrate the fact that they have huge, incredible capacities. And I think hardly a day should go by we don't go look inside and say, wow, and to be redundant, I mean, I can see, I can hear, and I can feel, I can walk and even run, and I can talk and formulate thought. I can remember, I can imagine, I can make choices, I can make decisions. I mean, that's wow stuff. That's what I call faculty. They have the faculty, which gives them the capacity to do anything that anyone has ever done that has comparable faculties or capacities. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I mean, they can do it. They're not prepared to do it. Well, what's going to happen? They have to utilize, function within those capacities. They got to start walking. They got to start talking. They got to start looking, and they got to start listening. And as they do that, they assimilate those experiences, and they are in process. Actually, it's a practice process. They are practicing, clumsy, inept, inadequate, but functional, just kind of doing it. And as they do that, the rough edges get shaved off, and it's like a little baby walking. I have a little 1-year-old in our life right now, and it's just a joy every day to watch that. The energy, the courage that she exhibits, as she fumbles and stumbles and falls and gets frustrated and yet always gets back up and tries again, and 3 steps become 4, 4 becomes 6. I know I do quite a bit of work on the computer, and she'll come over and she takes my hand off because she wants to get to the mouse.
Yeah.
But she had to hold on over here, so she just go one hand. And I would break loose and I'd grab the mouse, and she'd take the hand and pull it away, and grab the mouse and pull it away. And then one day, she pulled it away and went over here with the hand, and,
Sure.
Yeah, that's progress. That's something to be celebrated.
Yes.
And why can't we celebrate that as an adult? You do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you're frustrated, and, you're whatever, and all of a sudden, then you do it this way. Now, one of the great faults, of course, in that is that somewhere back there, we were told to not copy, to be ourselves, to do what comes naturally. And boy, does that get in the way of the process. In fact, we were talking earlier this evening, I don't mind being transparent and candid about it. When we put these microphones on, there's a little loop that's made in there. And I always put the little loop in there, and I have no idea why. You know what I mean? There was a professional once that put a loop in there when he put that mic on. Well, I didn't say, why do you put that loop there? I don't like that loop. I don't want that loop. I'm not going to put that loop. I just said, he put a loop. I guess there's supposed to be a loop there, and so I put my loop in. Just tonight I found out why. This is after 3 years of putting loops. I said, and I heard that it's because if someone steps on the cord, or if you do, it doesn't snap this area right in here.
Sure.
That made sense. But I didn't need to know that in order to put the loop in. But see, most people won't accommodate, they won't copy. They won't without, I'm not talking irrational things, but, just things. Why think it through when you're busy stumbling anyway? You just kind of do what the pros do. That was copy. Anyway, exercised, I guess, at first, capacities begin to reveal abilities. Inevitably, always, 100% of the time. What a gift. Wow, that's a wow. You get abilities. And things that seemed impossible now seem easy. It's like eating and, dressing and walking. We do that easily. Why stop? Why not begin to get more and more complex? And then we start honing that. That's called practicing. See, exercising capacity creates abilities. Practicing those abilities hones them into skills. And once a person is skillful, it's limitless what they can accomplish. So long as they understand in that process that they are not to compete or to be measured against the talented and the gifted. See, this is where it begins to break down. I think now we begin to talk about contest and competition. See?
I found them annoying.
Oh.
They almost were an intrusion into my professional activity, deliberately energetic to make things happen, to make productivity happen, and to look for things that were yet undone. What do we do to make that part of the management's skill set so that they can bring it to the front line, so that their lives and careers truly do explore and expose themselves?
Right. You're familiar with Deming? You've heard of Deming,
Yes.
and what have you, and his philosophies. His was more structural. There's no question. To be Demingized means that you begin to take real note of processes. In other words, for example, if you pour BBs through a funnel, there's going to be a pattern that's established. And what you do, you keep pouring BBs through there to see indeed if on that particular surface there is a particular pattern. Well, if you don't observe that and keep records and what have you, you will never do anything with the BBs because they'll always be in a mess. In other words, his technique was examine what you're doing and let each person in the process assume full responsibility for the end result. Now, it's not to let it go and then an inspector find it later, but everyone not only is a functional person, but an inspector. Do your job, this little specific thing, as well as you can do it, okay? And that's the inspection. And that creates, excellence. As a matter of fact, Japan got way ahead of America in that because he went there to teach them how to do this. He was ignored in this country. And so then eventually the Americans began to pick it up, and now I think Ford and Chevrolet and these major companies are producing cars comparable, if not better, than the Japanese once again. You know what I mean? Because they're following this lack of judgment being made by somebody where everyone else is in there doing their very best and being trained to do that. Process. Same thing in selling or in human relations. There has to be a way to say, okay, if you do this, this, and this, and you keep a record of it, that's going to establish a criteria. I'm sorry, statistics create a criteria. And a criteria, when we weigh ourselves against it, can always be improved, always.
Sure.
So statistics just give us the data, but it establishes a criteria, which if you examine it, well, if I did this different, that might make a difference up here, and so you start focusing. That's one thing that normally does not happen in multi-level or in sales for the most part, is that they're so interested in the results, all kinds of things get ignored back here. For example, we were making a point the other day that a results-oriented person oftentimes will get frozen in place. Because, in fact, I know this is true, everybody that I know, for the most part, in multi-level or in selling, is that when they go out, when they talk to somebody, they want a result. They want it now. Well, if you don't know where to go get the result, or if you go out and you've been frustrated by not getting one, it gets harder and harder to go out if that's what you're up to. And pretty soon, if you don't know where to get a result, it's easy not to go. I know, I experienced that. And so you busy yourself with other stuff, which is, and then you can always say, well, I work hard. I'm really trying. Which indeed, you're just,
and yet
letting air out of your tires. You're not functioning. And so the idea is to focus on the process. Like, for example, in multi-level marketing, it's as simple as going to a meeting every week. Just do it. That's part of the process. And inquire to people as you encounter them. Like today, I was just out in the world, and in fact, I was out running, and I was disheveled, and my hair was askew. I was in sweaty gear and all that, and I picked up 2 or 3 good leads just by initiating, conversations with people, inquiring, and about them, taking some interest in who they were, what they were doing, and say, well, I've got something that would contribute to that. And every single one of them responded. That's the process. I didn't know what they were going to say or do. That wasn't the issue. I was in process. Like if I had a result intention, I would have no idea whether I should do that or not. There'd be another dimension in there of apprehension and so what have you, so I probably wouldn't have done it. But if I don't care about the result, it's kind of like in selling. If I'm trying to sell you something, but I don't care if you buy it or not, I don't care what you do, I care that you know what can be done, it's easier to do what I have to do. If I'm invested in your buying it, that makes it harder, because now it's got, like I got a little axe behind me. You know, I'm going to whip up on you if I have to get the sale.
Oh, and I can feel your urgency too.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah. But if I can just focus on you and what I do and how it applies and what have you, then you're always going to do what you want to do. People never do what I want them to do. Never. I mean, I inform them, and then they do what they want to do. And either way is 100% okay with me. If you could just get rid of that need for the result. Because then we'll roll back here and we're saying, hey, if you got someone who is developing an ability, and he's in a company, and you put up a contest, that he knows, she knows, every single time that this skilled or talented person, I'm not skilled, I'm sorry, but a talented or gifted person is going to win it every time. And so the company is not accomplishing what it set out to do. And what you do, you can't pit those two against one another, because otherwise you've got talented and gifted people who are unjustly rewarded.
Constantly.
Yeah, they hardly do anything at all, and they're the star, and even they wonder sometimes why they're getting the trophy. They really do.
Because it's so easy for them.
Yeah.
That sense of,
this is nothing.
Cake.
And this person over here is constantly frustrated because he can't compete. And so, in fact, we were talking about this, that looking back, there was some years ago, I had a national company called Club America. And I went through all this stuff. I did it all because that's what I saw, and I figured, hey, but you keep thinking, and pretty soon I was just not pitting one person against another anymore. But we had some incredibly good fortune in two areas. One, putting up some substantial prizes for beating your best week. Just everybody was competing against their past effort. So we know they had the ability, and possibly because they've had more experience, they had more skill, so they had a good chance of being winners. You know, the only thing that might prohibit that is something that they could assume responsibility for, like distractions in the family, health, or whatever. Okay, but it wasn't a diminishing thing; it was circumstance now. And the skill, the talented and the gifted were challenged because they had to apply the process, which they probably didn't do before.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They had to get back in process if they were going to beat their best. So everybody was winning. It's hard, I guess, for the business mind to give someone a trip to Acapulco if they went from 4 sales to 6, and give the same price to someone up here who went from 30 sales to 35. It seems illogical, but I'll tell you, I knew that it was working.
Sure.
I knew that it was working. The other thing that we did was develop contests and things that anybody could win regardless of their skill level, if they were functioning, which is what we wanted them to do. If you believe in the function, then everything kind of follows after that, and I truly do. For example, one thing we had, and we had a lot of fun with it, was the mystery prospects. In other words, in any given city, I might have as many as 30 salespeople. And we'd say, okay, we've got 6 mystery prospects out here. Now, as you're working, if you happen upon one of them, you're going to have to do 4 things. You've got to do this. In our case, it was do a entertainment analysis, and then you have to do the 3 favors. There was a special intro into the sales presentation.
Okay.
You had to show at least 3 benefits or products with their benefits, and a 3-question close. Okay, and if you did that, then the mystery prospect would call us, and you'd win this nice prize. Well, it raised everybody's consciousness of that process. And that worked marvelously, yeah.
Sure.
And so, you see, it doesn't matter where the person was on the spectrum of developed skills or whatever, they all had an equal chance. And we got a lot of business out of it. We really did. Now, it made it even more interesting after a while when we began to narrow the mystery prospects down. And those we say, okay, there's one in zip code, 75231. Okay, and everybody would begin to focus on that.
They were searched out.
Yeah, and then when it got a little stale, we'd narrow it down some more. And of course, the people in that neighborhood were barraged with calls. But we had winners. Yes. We had winners, and they came from every category, and it was pretty exciting. The other thing is to be able to somehow, and you have to have records, but to begin to contest on processes, like how many calls did you make? You know, how many dials actually did you make? How many calls and what have you? And I have found that people have a high level of integrity in keeping those kind of records if they understand what they're doing. Those kind of records you cannot demand from a managerial point of view. It's too rigid. But if a person is contested toward his own excellence by recording those things, then I mean, you're talking major, major results. But see, prior to that, I mean, I've had pie in the face contest, peanut rolling down Main Street, you know, and I won a few, lost a few, and when you lose them, there seemed to be an emptiness in it. I mean, when you win it, it was an emptiness, and when you lost it, it was a diminishment, and so it really wasn't working. Another thing I've seen companies do is they put up these contests where everybody can win. This is so, you know, it's a lot better, a lot better. But say, for example, if you've got 30 salespeople and 25 of them win, by not doing much more they would have done anyway if you hadn't even had the contest.
Sure.
I've seen, you ever seen that?
Yes.
You'd have got just as much done with no contest. But they put this contest up. I know there was a company I worked with that had a trip every year. And all you had to do was be in the business to win, practically. And yet, guess what? There were people who were left behind. And those people would leave. And some of them could have been astoundingly effective.
Sure.
Tell you what, we're in difficulty here. This half hour is shot by. This is Life Talk. It's about life, living, and making a living, and sometimes making a living, which is what we're talking about. We have a website, too. It's www.bernmoses.com. And you can go in there and find out what we do, why we do it, how long we've been doing it, our history, our heritage, and, you know, all of our subjects. Or you can just call 916-366-8749, and we're glad to chat with you and send probably a couple tickets to a free event. I hate to rush away, but this is what's happening for us. And you're Stephen Mills, and I'm Bern
Moses.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Bern.